Due to some recent cases, people have started demanding changing laws related to rape. But is that going to help? Hello everyone,
I'm Rahul.
I am Prasanna Naidu and you are listening to the Right News podcast. Okay Rahul sir, let's get straight to this. It's the Hathras gang rape case which was pretty much amplified in the media. I don't know what were the reasons or intentions, but we know that it is not the first case which is so heinous in nature. Such cases keep on happening, and media cherry picks cases and runs their propagandas and narratives according to their needs and circumstances. But the problem here in this episode we are going to discuss is changing laws related to rape or a certain crime. Is that the solution, or we need judicial reforms? Because the system itself is, if I can use the word, handicapped or paralyzed. What do you say about it?
So you are absolutely right. Actually, the first instance of law and order is not the laws itself. The laws itself are broadly wherever they are. The first instance is actually the implementation of laws. And that whole aspect of implementing the laws is the premise of judicial system. And I must say that being a lawyer myself and having seen the judicial system working, it needs serious reforms. And they say that procedure is handmaiden of justice. What we see even in Hathras case, or even in many other criminal as well as civil cases, is that procedure and judicial process, the judicial delays, and the whole investigation process up till the point where you get conviction, the entire process subverts the whole idea of justice. So we need a reform in justice system and judicial system, and that is the not just need of the hour, it was the need of the last century probably. But yes, definitely we need a lot of reform in this process, in this judicial system.
Yeah, so let's give some idea to the audience who are not familiar with the system. Whenever a crime happens, you go to the police station to lodge a complaint. If it's a cognizable offense, a FIR is to be lodged, and then the police. So the difference is, if it's a non-cognizable offense, you file a like a
It's
kacha
called an
complaint.
yeah, it's called
Yeah,
NC.
NC, but in the local language, people, even the police say it as a kacha complaint, something like that, and which is of no use. It's just a record in their books where it mentions. Maybe it is used for statistics. That's the only purpose. I don't say.
Do you really believe that? If you start, let me just highlight. See, what happens is a crime is committed. Let's say a crime is committed at a certain point and space, and different crimes are. You don't have. There is a difference between the time the crime is committed and the time people become aware of the crime. Let's say, for example, let's say it's because every crime is different. So if there is a bank robbery where at night the dacoits come and steal some money out of the cash out of the bank, then the crime is committed in the night, but it is known only later. So it starts from the time crime is committed, then when people get to know, then when people report to the police, then what kind of cognizance police takes. Okay, because this is called the first information. Okay, now the first information is sort of analyzed by the officer who sits there at the desk, and then it is converted either into an FIR or a non-cognizable complaint, and then it moves into the next level where investigation starts. And first of all is the statement of the person who is reporting the crime, and then the investigation officer is assigned to the case, and investigation officer conducts an inquiry. Now he visits the premises. Let's say it's a bank robbery, then he visits the bank, and then ideally seals off all the the entire place so that he gets the fingerprints and everything. And then he forms his opinion as to who is the suspect in this case and who is the possible potential, not actual, but potential criminal in this case. And then he sort of takes them into custody for questioning. And when he takes them into custody, he has got 24 hours just to inquire about it. And then after 24 hours, however, he has to report it to the magistrate. And the magistrate decides whether it is important for the police to, investigate further. And it is important in such cases where information is dependent on the person who is accused himself. Okay. So, for example, he himself is the record keeper. Then you need to inquire about him a little more, because he is not going to share his records with you and incriminate himself. And this is particularly true of financial crimes, because it's very difficult to track them without information that he is giving. Thereafter, the magistrate may say that now you cannot inquire from him anymore, and you have to keep him in judicial custody. And that is only if there is a risk that he will escape, he will flee, and he will not be caught thereafter. Only in those cases there is a judicial custody. Otherwise, he's free. Otherwise, and then when the investigation is complete, and you see that he is or some person is accused.
No, but here also that accused has to apply for bail, right?
Yes, if he is committed to judicial custody, he has to apply for bail. If he is not committed, there is magistrates take it everything as, now he will be committed to judicial custody. It's not required. Judicial custody is also dependent on whether this person is a risk. Is there a likelihood of him being a criminal? That is the first case magistrate has to look for. And then, is he a risk that he will flee or he will abscond? And if such cases are there, or he will destroy evidence, all these instances are the supporting reasons for judicial custody. But if there are no such existence of such reasons, then no judicial custody is not required. However, magistrates don't apply their mind. They just condemn everyone to judicial custody. That's why there is a bail process and there is a whole thing going on.
Yeah, but even here, if the accused is not aware about his rights, or he doesn't engage any lawyer, then he simply goes to judicial custody, because he was not knowing that he can apply for bail. And if he had applied for bail, like made the application, then 100% he would have gone bail and he would have been out. Right?
No, I will tell you, there are, let me finish this process, because there are some ways there are some tricks involved. Let me tell you those once we finish this. So let's say the police complete the investigation, the accused is still in judicial custody, and this police suspect that this accused is the one who has committed the crime. Then they prepare a charge sheet and it is filed in the criminal court. The criminal court then hears it and then extends his custody or grants him bail, depending on whatever is the process. And then
how much time does it take for
it? We'll come to that. We'll come to that. There are lots of nitty-gritties there. But then presumably, let's say the police have done their job well, and the accused is actually guilty, and then the court finds him so. Then then the court passes a statement of his conviction, and then there is a separate hearing to determine the term of his imprisonment based on the gravity of the crime, the situation involved. So their sentencing is done, whether it is imprisonment, fine, both, all sorts of things are discussed and it is done. Both of these, the conviction and sentencing, are up to appeal. So it goes to the next court, and there is an appeal process, and that process from the next court it goes to High Court. After first appeal, they have a second appeal. If there is no provision for appeal, then you go file a writ petition, criminal writ petition, saying that this is wrong conviction. It gets overturned. You file a writ petition to quash the FIR, to quash the charge sheet. All these process can be, you can avail until it finally reaches to the Supreme Court, and whatever, you can exhaust all your remedies there. Now, in case of life sentence, more importantly, in case of where it is a heinous crime and the accused has been sentenced to death, then High Court and Supreme Courts are also involved. There is a review petition, curative petition, there is a mercy petition also. All these processes are involved, and it goes to the President of India also. If the accused has got the financial wherewithal to carry out all this process. Now, if you look at, now let's go to the nitty gritties. Now, imagine that you have an information of a crime. Let's say you see a person robbing another person, then you can call your police number, which is 100 in India mostly. Or if you know the number of the local police station, you say that this person is being robbed and there are 3 people, so and so, whatever it is. That information has to be recorded. Now, the police may not record it. Okay, if it's a 100 number, I have, in my own personal experience, I have seen a person beating a lady on the footpath near Bombay High Court, and I called 100 number, and there was no one picking up the number. So this is the tragedy of the system. I mean, luckily there was a police station, very close by, Chowki. So I went there and I told the inspector, and then he, sent one Havaldar to investigate. But my point is this, that, information recording itself, there is a gap. Now, how do you describe a fight? Suppose I have a stone and I beat a person. It's a grievous assault. Okay. The police will say ki hatapai ho gayi. Now, what is hatapai? Hatapai means it's like a, it's a little altercation, but it is not grievous in nature. So it becomes non-cognizable. And then they use these words and convert it into a non-cognizable. So if you go to the next level, then once the police start investigating, the accused, there is a police register where when the accused is brought in, he has to be entered. This person has been brought in. Have you ever seen a police register at the police station? I have never seen. There has to be a record that this accused was brought in at 11 a.m. in the police station, because from there 24 hours time limit starts. Police have 24 hours to interrogate him. But police, what they do is that they bring him in. They don't put him in a cell or something. They just make him sit there. They make him sit for more than 24 hours. Okay, he is not in a cell, or they talk to him, but it is already trying to get information. But he is not shown as technically being brought in. Now they show him as being brought in. Let's say after 24 hours, after 12 hours, 18 hours. Okay, so that time is now expanded. Now, second thing is, once you bring a person in and put him in a cell, you have to go for a medical examination, because they have to be, what are his pre-existing injuries, everything has to be documented by the medical officer, and then he is given, then police can interrogate him, and then he can ask for medical examination again to check whether police have hurt him, beat him, tortured him. All these things can be exposed, but there is no medical examination of any person who is put in a cell at the time. Before putting him in the cell. So he is brought in. You have to first take him to a medical examiner. There is a report to be made, and then you have to take him into custody. So this custody, without examination, it happens. Then whatever happens, then you have judicial custody. Judicial custody is like a glorified jail. Okay, it's not jail. It's not as bad as jail. You don't have a uniform and all that. That's they show in the movie. But it's like a relaxed jail. Now the beauty is, if whatever time you spend in judicial custody counts towards your sentence. So if your sentence is 6 months, you have spent more than 6 months in judicial custody, you don't need to go to prison. So when Sanjay Dutt went in that Tada case, people had advised him that you stay in judicial custody. It is better.
Then police custody.
You are more comfortable. People can visit you. Everything can happen. Then going into prison. But he tried to get out of that judicial custody, and then you have to go to prison. Okay, because the sentence has to be completed. Whatever your sentencing is, it's 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. The more time you spend in judicial custody, the better it is.
So, is there really a difference between judicial custody and prison, like
Yes,
the jail?
yes. There is a lot of difference in those two. Judicial custody is like a relaxed remand home. So
So, there is police
see, police
custody.
custody is in the police station. There is a cell where you are held. Okay.
Right,
Like a jail only.
right.
Okay, but it's
Hmm.
like in the police station.
Hmm.
Okay. Now the police can question you at any time in the presence of your advisor.
And do a lot of things.
Yes, and do a lot of things and whatever they are allowed to do. So they
And
do,
they are not allowed to do also.
yeah, whatever. Let's not get into that. So that is one part of the holding of the accused. Then the second part is the judicial custody. So judicial custody. So the custody basically, the word tells you that custody is like custody of children, custody of asset. The responsibility of the person is now with police, in police custody. In judicial, the responsibility of the accused is on the judiciary. In prison, it is in charge of the prison warden or the prison system. So these are the three different custodies that you have. Now in judicial custody, if you want to interrogate or talk to this person, you have to take judicial permission, which means the permission of the magistrate. Which means every time you go to the thing, you have to go to the magistrate first or take a permission and then go and talk to this fellow. You can also get home cooked food if magistrate allows you, which you can understand the implications. What are all the possibilities that magistrates will allow you to have these luxuries delivered to your judicial cell. But judicial custody, it is allowed. A certain leeway is allowed based on the discretion of the magistrate, and magistrate has to decide based on the facts, not his whims and fancies, but it's supposed to be on basis of facts. That is the person likely to have committed the crime, and what is the weight of the evidence? Is he just being brought in for harassment? What exactly the magistrate has to apply his mind and decide whether how much leniency to show the accused in this process. So this is the part where once you are committed to judicial custody, you are in the custody for period of 15 days and extended thereafter by the magistrate depending on the requirements of the investigation. And if it is more than 15 days, then you can apply for bail. You can say, my investigation is over. I am not a threat to the witnesses or to the evidence, or I am not a risk in terms of absconding or fleeing the country or these kinds of things. And once you are able to satisfy the judge that you are basically not going to run away, then the judge allows you a bail, so where you can go back to your life till the investigation is over. So that is in essence, lots of things can happen within this process itself. The
all this process is before the actual case starting, right?
Yes, this is still the police have not even filed a charge sheet.
They have not even started the proper investigation.
No, they may have started an investigation, but they have definitely not completed the investigation. So maybe fingerprints are still pending. And what happens is, you have the proof. This person has done it. The fingerprints are there. But the forensic lab is taking 2 months to process the fingerprints. Then what will you do? So then, after 15 days, it's open for the accused to ask for bail. And that is where everything collapses. So this we have not even reached the court. Okay, once we reach the court, and there is a whole new process at the court stage.
So what happens is you file a complaint. In case of a criminal case, once the FIR is filed, investigation has to be done by the police, and they have to file a charge sheet based on the investigation.
Correct.
These are the charges, and the accused must be tried for these charges and punished. And after a charge sheet has been filed in the court,
Mm.
That is the moment when the actual court trial begins.
Yes.
And then the court trial goes on, then there's all those of it.
So there are two aspects what we have discussed. This first aspect is the investigative side of the thing. That needs a reform, which is a separate question, and we can go into detail there. But that is a separate question altogether. Then on starts the court process, and that has its own delays built in.
How much time does it take to file a charge sheet?
Oh, that's a open-ended question, and that this is how actually many times, and in fact, in case of Justice Loya, also a popular case for the so-called left liberals to challenge. It's very easy to sort of subvert a case at the investigation stage because there is not much oversight there, and there is not much record. There is easy to it's malleable on the investigative side. So all sorts of things, including filing the charge sheet, you can take lot of delay to file a charge sheet, and then the case becomes weak because why did you take so long to file a charge sheet? That itself becomes a reason.
Yeah, and for example, in that JNU case of that Kanhaiya Kumar, the charge sheet was filed after around 2 or 3 years. Okay, and I just read some article of Hindustan Times where they were claiming that according to a study, charge sheet in Mumbai, like Mumbai police files a charge sheet after it takes around 9.2 months at an average to file a charge sheet. But in CRPC, the actual Criminal Procedure Code, it is mentioned that the charge sheet must be filed, I think, between 60 to 90 days. That is 2 to 3 months, right?
Yes, actually, the investigating officer has to take an extension for that, for filing the charge sheet. But anyways, these all things, they don't happen. There are lots of procedural issues in that. But what actually happens is that lot of times the investigation itself takes a long time. Okay, just because you have an accused in custody doesn't mean he has committed. In all honesty, he could be just an informer, or he could be a bystander, for all you know. The accused, who is really accused, that is also a question. Who have they caught? Okay, so it definitely not doesn't always the investigation doesn't get over in 80 90 days, 60 to 90 days, and then there is an extension to be given, and police have to prove they have to satisfy the magistrate as to why this extension has to be granted. All these the law exists, but in reality, or most of the time, delay, there is a delay. Why there is a delay? There is no cogent reason given, but magistrate knows that the police are overworked, and actually in reality police are
They
overworked.
are. Hmm.
So it's not possible to investigate the kind of we have very less police resources as compared to what we should be having. So in all honesty, they will be saying this forensic lab has not yet filed its report. It has been 3 months, so please give us extension, and the magistrate is forced to give an extension. So all these things contribute to the delay, and that's why the delay is higher. Now, let's say if you want to analyze fingerprints, so number of fingerprints to be analyzed will be more, okay, because there will be like 50 fingerprints to be analyzed. Half will be of people who are irrelevant to the crime, but there will be like 1 or 2 which are the critical ones, which prove your crime or which prove that the accused was there or something of that sort. But for that, you have to go through all the 50, 80, 100, whatever, and it has to be done in a proper scientific manner. So in any case, whenever there is a fingerprint, footprint, and it gets worse when it is a footprint or a plaster cast of a footprint, because that takes even longer, because there are further there are lesser number of experts who can analyze that. If it's DNA, then you are condemned for 3 years, no charge sheet, because the DNA lab is having a backlog which is very long. So all these things contribute immensely to the delays, and that is why the charge sheet itself gets filed only subsequently. By the time the police officer who was investigating officer gets retired, then another person comes and there is a whole new system going on. So all these things happen.
Yeah. Even the magistrate or the judge gets transferred.
Yeah, everything can change. If you are having a 8 to 9 months time, a lot of things can change. Accused himself dies, then the criminal procedure actually, comes to an end. So all these things happen.
Basically, what we are saying is what you see in Bollywood movies is complete crap. Like the one judge hearing the case, the whole case, and that too in one stretch. Examination, cross-examination, everything happening on the same day, and even the judgment given on the same day sometimes.
Yes, that is impossible. Like they should show that. I think there is one ad for Kit Ply or some plywood. The advocates keep getting older and older. Judge also keeps getting older, but the plywood remains the same. I think that is more relevant. Like every time he's about to give a decision, the other fellow says objection, my lord, and then the whole thing goes back. So that's more realistic because it takes a long time to just enter the doors of the court system.
I think the recent movies which are coming up related to judiciary, they are showing at least something more relatable to the reality. But the previous movies are complete crap. Like for example, I think there's a good movie in Marathi named Court, which is very realistic, and in Jolly LLB also they have shown some parts like where quite
No, the
realistic.
courts actually wear you out. Okay. So what happens is that you might have a case there, but adjournment is granted. But adjournment is granted is fine, but the next date is not told to you till the end of the day. So you waste your whole day. Okay. Now because you are criminal.
Okay. Let's come to this then. What are the reasons of these delays? So it's not only police we are blaming, but there are other things also. For example, adjournments, as you pointed out. So adjournments is nothing but the lawyer or the party, one of the parties, asked for the next date. Like they asked for some time that whatever task was to be done on that hearing can't be done due to so and so reason. So please grant us a future date, your lordship.
Yes.
So every time the reason is not rational.
Legal.
Yes. So every time.
See, adjournment is a strategy. Okay. Suppose I know my case doesn't have merit, then I will go in and choose a strategy called adjournment, where I will postpone and postpone and postpone and see, there are two advocates. So public prosecutor in this criminal system or in civil cases, government pleader, and the advocate of the party. Okay. God forbid if there are more than these two. Okay. By chance, if there are more than two parties, then there are three advocates, and each advocate has his or her own ailments to rely on to get adjournment. Okay. Now, public prosecutor or the government pleader is never briefed by the government or the police. They never tell the public prosecutor that what exactly is the update on the case. So that can be the sole reason for the public prosecutor to take time. I don't know what is happening. I have to talk to the police. Now, ideally, the police should be briefing the public prosecutor on a daily basis or a regular basis, at least weekly basis.
At least before the hearing.
At least before the hearing. Now, this is the low bar, but yes. But the public prosecutor often meets the policeman right in front of the judge. Okay, till that time he hasn't seen the policeman. Okay.
Yeah, and there he has kai chalu hai.
So then he asks right in front of the judge, what is the status of the case? Then the policeman says, there is no change. It's the same. We are awaiting the report from forensic lab. Now I am giving you a genuine reason. Yeah. Okay. So if this is the case, then we are still awaiting the report from the forensic lab or whatever report we are awaiting. So then the judge says, okay, so next, what date do you want? And then it goes 3 months or 2 months or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on whatever is the situation, it goes for that. And however, the date and whatever is communicated, the whole thing takes whole day. Okay. Because the person, the accused and his family or whoever is coming to represent him, they have to remain present for the whole day. It gets wasted. Okay. One
And
time,
the hearing actually stands for around 5 minutes or 10 minutes also.
5 minutes. Yes, for that 5 minutes you have to wait the whole day. Now, in sometimes after 20 occasions where government pleader or public prosecutor or the government side, opponent side is taking, is not or is taking adjournments, then the client or the accused, he sometimes skips. He doesn't come. So then he tells the police that I have fever or something and gives a doctor certificate, and then that is the reason for the other party to take adjournment.
No, this is every time also people don't give some certificate also. They just say,
Yeah, because
I
courts
am
also know, okay, after 20 times this has been adjourned. If there is any reason for him to be present, then anyways, so that is one cause of adjournment. Sometimes the lawyers get sick. So
Yes.
accused is there, but lawyer is not there. So that again, day gets wasted.
Or
Now-
else the lawyer has some other important matter in some other court.
That also. So in all such cases, this goes on postponing, and there is never a today's case gets adjourned to tomorrow. It never happens. It gets adjourned to 3 weeks, 2 weeks,
Next month, yeah.
2 months, and that's how it keeps happening.
And it completely depends on the matter, depends on the parties and the judge. I've also heard, like, I've not seen it in criminal cases, but in civil cases, I've heard the judge giving dates after 6 months, 8 months also, probably in high courts and all.
No, if you are in second appeals, you are in civil second appeals, land dispute or these kinds of second appeals where question of law is involved, and you are filing a second appeal in last 1 or 2 years, then you have to go next year. Okay, this is not this year because the backlog is from 91 matters, 97 matters, 2001 matters. Those are pending. So 2011 matters are still in backlog only. They are not even 2020 matters are so fresh that the paper is also not yet yellowed. So they say this I am not going to take only. First
And the paper has not been misplaced also.
yeah, that is another thing. Papers are not found. All these issues, and that is because of the workload. See, the question.
So this is another reason for adjournments many times. Case files itself are not found by the court.
No, that is one aspect. But the thing is, if you have matters which are pending from 97, in 97 what you were doing, I'm sure nobody knows. Okay, and courts are supposed to have that record because the case is still in progress. Second appeal. I mean, I'm talking about high courts here, but there are lots of cases even in the district court or sessions court stage, and the amount of paperwork that needs to be done just by the office of the court, it takes a long time. Okay, and that means even to file a proper report of the court proceedings of the day, it takes 2-3 days. That time 3 days work has already happened. So you have a tremendous amount of workload at the court stage. The court is completely understaffed at district and session court level, even at the magistrate court level, and the amount of work, the paperwork, the workload itself, and every small thing is a cause of delay. Like if you want to send a notice of appearance to a person, that whole process is a process, and it takes 4-5 days, and to get the process underway. Then it is supposed to be posted in a registered AD post, speed post AD. Now, speed post AD takes longer than your normal courier. If you send by normal courier, it is not accepted. You have to send by acknowledgement due post. Then, if you send by acknowledgement due post, then it is recognized. If it is still not traceable, you have to show the map. On the website, they show the tracking. So, that tracking map you have to show. If that tracking map doesn't show, it is because it's, if you are sending from Mumbai to, let's say, Aurangabad or to Kolhapur, then it goes to Pune,
and then disappears. Indian Post is magical. So after Pune, it is not traced. So then you see, past 15 days it's in it's in Pune, or after Pune it's 15 days have passed. I'm sure it must have reached Kolhapur by now. Even a person walking will reach Kolhapur, but it's not a scene. So it's like,
maybe I disagree because my experience with Indian Post, Speed Post and all has been very good, and the tracking has always been updated. But yeah, I agree with that certain cases would have been there that where such instances may happen. Yes.
So good that you have had good experiences, but I don't know what is the reason. But then there are lots of reasons for these kinds of delays, and that contributes to the workload, because see, the matter comes up for hearing, and the only activity in that hearing is that he notice or summons or whatever you want to call it is not yet received by the accused or the party. So next date me granted. Now that whole thing has to be recorded, because it has to go in the record of proceedings.
Yes.
This happened. Now that is a worthless time waste of the court staff.
And then the advocate says, please grant me earliest date next week. But the judge says, next week is Diwali vacations or Christmas vacation.
And vacations are always there. Okay. There is either Diwali, there is, like everyone wants to take their holidays, which is, personal leave, which is different from the vacation.
Right.
So senior advocate is gone to US for holiday. My lord's senior advocate is coming in this case and he is in US for holidays. Please grant 15 days time. Then he has decided to extend his holiday by one more week. So another 15 days is gone. So these are all the issues. And actually, if you see in theory, this should not happen. But the practical aspects are that it does happen. Then sometimes judges also get sick. Judges are not going to, not fall sick without vacations. So sometimes they also fall sick. And by the time you become judge, you get 100 ailments because of the stress. So you already have diabetes, you already have, all sorts of backache and all these sorts of ailments. And definitely you need to, address those. That is another reason.
Yeah. So broadly, these are the reasons for delays, and we can't play the blame game over here on a particular actor in the whole system, because each actor has its own problems, and those problems are really very
they're justified.
Justified, because it is very true that the judiciary is overburdened, the workload is a lot. Same goes with the police, and though it is very organized on paper, it not always works according to what it's written on paper, right?
No, you see, this whole
because it has its own reasons. Because it has its own reasons.
Yeah, the whole system, you have to look at it as a holistic problem. Okay. Now I'm telling you, the reason is like, someone said that there is a number of judges is the reason. Now they appointed lots of judges. They appointed judges, where will they sit?
Yeah,
the old toilet was converted into a courtroom. Now,
no, I don't know about this.
It was a British structure. Okay.
Where did this happen? Can you mention?
Let me not tell, because it will be a problem. I'm telling you that it has happened. Many new clients don't know that where this judge is sitting now is actually used to be a toilet.
In the British era.
Yes. So they had, you can imagine the size of the toilets also. They were like grand. Now they have been converted into courtrooms. So you can imagine the size of the toilets and the grandness of that place when there were only two judges. The thing is that what happened was, this was an old British structure. Now that place has been upgraded from a small taluka level place to a district level place, and there are 12 judges in that same building. Now there are 15 rooms, so 12 judges can sit,
and there may be 15 chambers for them, which has been created out of some
Then there is
interior design work.
courts office staff. There's
Court
other office.
staff,
Yeah.
all these things, and then where will these people sit? Where will the clients sit? So the clients can't sit in the court because the courtrooms are so small that only 20 people or 10 people can sit, and the number of cases in the day which are listed are like 50. So every person who comes, there are two parties, right, for every case. So there are 50 cases, means there are 100 parties are already there, and they have only 20 seats. This is in one court, and there are 15 such courts. There is no place. The point is that there is a paucity of infrastructure. So it's not just on infrastructure side, right up to number of judges, number of support staff. So judge is there, but he doesn't have support staff. What is the use? There are police officers, but there are no forensic teams. Today, crime is more about solving forensics. And then forensic teams, there is no forensic labs. Forensic labs are not properly staffed. They have staff, but they don't have equipment. If they have equipment, that is not serviced. So you have to look at the whole system as a whole. Okay, you cannot pick and choose. Okay, this part needs reform. Once you reform, because always it's like if you have read this book called Goal, it's the whole supply chain. Okay, it's a system that needs. Once you solve one problem, the other part which is not a problem becomes a problem. Okay, so it's not about solving one issue, but solving the system as a whole. And I would say that Supreme Court should look at its own affairs and look at how high courts are organized, how the distribution of work is there, how each high court should look within their own states, how to organize better and work on reform. Court system is independent, but there has to be reform embedded in the system.
Right. Okay, so now we have tried to understand the system properly by diving deeper into it, like each and every aspect. We have not covered everything, but we have. I'm sure that our audience knows much more than what they used to know before about the justice system, and what are the reasons for the delays and what are the problems. So, what are the solutions to it? So, one basic solution which I feel is can solve more than 90% of the problems of the judicial system is by digitizing it. Even the problem of corruption will be solved more than 50% due to it. Not completely, but yes. For example, as courts are forced now due to the lockdown, one positive effect I feel is they are forced to use technology more. So video conferencing is held, cases are heard online and stuff, which I think would have been started before that. For example, when the court used to adjourn the matter because the one party is somewhere in Kolhapur or Sangli and he is to be produced in Bombay High Court or Mumbai Sessions Court, say, and it used to just adjourn the matter because the party cannot reach there. So simply by making a video call, the problem would have been solved. Okay, but that approach is not there, right?
Exactly. And what you have highlighted is just the tip of the iceberg. Digitization is, it's a tool. But before digitization, you have to get the judges into digital mindset. That
Exactly.
What is relevant to the case, not the procedure. So procedure means they will continue to, look at the minutiae of the procedure while neglecting the justice has to be done in spirit, not just in procedure. What they are focusing on is a lot of times procedure. And that is not their fault also, because these people, when you become a judge, by the time you become a judge, you have spent about 15-20 years as an advocate and you have learned your digital systems or whatever your latest technology in mostly 10-15 years ago. After that, most of the time, you're dealing with the older systems. Like when I am working, I am talking about cases which happened in 1987, 1991. So these are the times that I'm talking about most of the time. These are the events that I'm talking about in court most of the time.
Now, when you look at this, my approach to digitization has to be driven from me myself, like an advocate, as an advocate. And when I reach that maturity, when whole people who have come up with me, they are going to reach that maturity of digital awareness and using technology in day-to-day affairs, then when they become judges, or when the judges come from the same brackets, then we will know these people, the judges from our batch, will then force technological change.
Yeah, so basically one must be constantly in touch with the new updates in technology.
I think more than judges, lawyers and clients have to be educated about about digitization as it is, and digital technologies that can help and assist them. Once that happens, grow slowly, it will seep into the judicial system, and it is too slow.
Yeah, because those lawyers will become judges, so automatically
and so on.
things will
Yes.
happen. Yeah.
And secondly, you have to, when judges have a little more time, okay, you can train them. Like in a corporate setting, everyone goes for a training. Okay. You go for a training, product training, new product training, some sort of training everyone goes to just update themselves of the new skills. Okay. All the judges need to be, sent to digital training. And so that new technology, they can themselves invent these solutions, but they have to be made aware of the solutions, and they have to sort of absorb the digital mindset. Now otherwise what happens is that digital mindset is, if you force it, it turns into a nightmare. Like Bombay High Court wants to have digital filings, so I have to file digitally, give a pen drive, and the law says that I have to give a CD. But thankfully, the court office understands that now CDs are not available, pen drives is okay. So they accept pen drives. For each case, one pen drive has to be given, and a printout, and affidavit that whatever is in the pen drive is the same as what I am giving a printout. So instead of making a paper,
Then what's the use? What's the use of
what's the
filing
use
it
of digital
digitally?
filing? Yeah, this is like a nightmare because the digital mindset is not accepted. It is being forced. So you have to accept a digital mindset. Once it is accepted, then you will see proper change.
Yeah.
And ultimately, see the ultimate effect. What is the use of law? The use of law is that it should strike a fear in the mind of a person who is about to commit a crime, not after he commits a crime. So that fear comes when you see people caught and tried and prosecuted and committed, and they go to jail in front of your eyes.
Yeah, so basically fast in short span of
It
time.
has to be fast, and it has to be certain, because I know that this person has committed a crime and I see that he's escaped. Then it is not a good system. When I know that this person has committed the crime, even if I don't share, I see the police have reached to him and they have found him out and they have sent him to jail, and the court has sentenced him to whatever imprisonment he has committed for his crime. Then I will think twice about committing a crime myself.
Yes,
So it
exactly.
is the certainty of punishment, not the quantum of punishment.
And that is not the current system exactly, and that's why people have this mindset that they are open to even committing crimes because they know कि बाबा क्या होगा, ज्यादा से ज्यादा कोर्ट में मैटर जाएगा, वो मैटर चलता रहेगा, फिर अपना काम होता रहेगा.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there is another aspect when it comes to the parallel aspect to the civil law, and that is that the cost of compliance for any person should be so low that it should be easy to comply with the law. At the same time, if you break this law, then the cost of breaking the law should be very high. At this time, it is reverse. So we can talk about it in a separate episode, I think, because this is a big matter. And once you resolve this issue, in criminal, I see that the person committing a crime is caught and tried and sentenced properly, I will be afraid to commit a crime. And in civil, I see that complying with the law is very easy, but breaking the law is tough.
And once I break the law, it's a big headache and I have to pay a lot of penalty for breaking the law. Then it will be beneficial and you will see the society turning very quickly.
Yes, you are absolutely right. So basically, what point we are making is, in the current context regarding the recent rape cases and all, reforming the laws, like the rape laws or any criminal laws, is not the solution. The solution is reforming the whole system, the judicial system, the police system. So people who are tweeting about change rape laws, or even lame tweets like stop rape, I don't know what does it even make sense. But uh, what we must talk about is solutions to the judiciary system, and what we must uh, kind of maybe a revolution or pressurize more is reforming the system. So please talk about these things. At least when if we start talking about it, reforms may take place later. So all the viewers listening to this podcast, I request you all to talk about these things, talk about the solutions to the justice system, reforming the justice system, and maybe tweet more, share this podcast wherever you can. And for listening to more such episodes, please follow us here. We'll come up with a new episode next week. Thank you all for listening to this podcast.
Thank you.